everybody, and welcome to the special meeting of the Village of Fox Point Board. We're in Schwimmer Hall, Municipal Building, 7200 North Santa Monica Boulevard, Fox Point. It's October 10, 2019, at 7 p.m. I'll ask the treasurer to call the roll.
Trustee Fonstad?
Here.
Trustee Simchich? Here. Trustee Sumner? Here. Trustee Torado?
Here.
Trustee Kravitz?
Here.
Trustee Ullman?
Here.
President Frazier?
Here. Everybody is here. We move to agenda item 2, persons desiring to be heard. I have one speaker card, and the speaker has suggested that she wishes to defer her time until the agenda item is called, which has to do with the little survey. Just to review the rules, everybody gets 3 minutes to speak. You can speak now, you can speak when the item is called on the agenda, or you can split your time. Is there anyone else that wishes to be heard on a matter on and off the agenda? I'm hearing none. I also want to welcome the Boy Scouts here who are attending to fulfill a requirement of a citizenship merit badge. Welcome. We hope you learn a lot about local government. We move to agenda item 3, the consent agenda. Is there any member who wishes to remove an item from the consent agenda? Seeing none, I move that we adopt the consent agenda in toto. Second by Mr. Kravitz. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? The consent agenda is adopted. Agenda item 4 is unfinished business. The first, 4A, is consideration of possible action regarding the process and operation of the building board. We have addressed this item before, but tonight I think we have a specific proposal to consider. I'll ask the village manager and the assistant village manager if they would to, again, briefly summarize the issue and concern.
Yeah, we'll start out, and Michael can jump in whenever he deals with this. He's really the staff person who's assigned to work with the building board. We talked about it last month, just kind of on the periphery at 30,000-foot level. Kind of didn't really, we just kind of left it there for consideration, which is fine. So we sat down as a staff and tried to distill a little bit, and we made some assumptions. One was that we didn't get, and we could absolutely be wrong, as always. We got the feeling that there wasn't a feeling on the part of the board that they didn't want to have a building board. In other words, they wanted to keep building boards, which is fine. At the same time, we recognize that the current operation of the building board is presenting some difficulties for staff, for the building board members themselves to some extent, and for the citizens to some extent. So we tried to distill down some recommendations, and we included a memo written by Mike West, former president of the building board member, and Del Wilson, who's a building board member, where they made some recommendations for improvements, and I've included that in your packet. I recited it just briefly in the memo, and then we added one other recommendation, that is to perhaps limit and focus the building board's review authority. Again, primarily trying to make sure that building board members spend their time on those activities which may have the greatest impact to the village. And secondly, to not frankly make our citizens go through the process of the building board for things that really might not be of great consequence to the village. Again, kind of keeping in mind the judicial decision from the 1950s and the idea that you're not supposed to cause, your finding is supposed to make sure that you do not cause a substantial depreciation of the values of the neighborhood. It's not really aesthetic directly. So we included this memo in your packet for your consideration. We're just, it's one of those things that I just don't think we can leave it as it is and say, hey, it's what we got us to do. We'd really like to do a better job, I guess from a staff perspective, at facilitating this service to the community. So I guess, depending on what you want to do with it this evening, in your direction. Michael, is that pretty much everything I missed?
What I would like the board to consider is adoption of the recommendations that were contained in the village manager's memo, which largely met the recommendations of Mr. West and Mr. Wilson. And I believe the manager and the assistant manager would correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that is the staff recommendation to the board. I believe the staff feels like the status quo is not responsive to what the citizens of the village board should be. It's not operating efficiently, and this is probably the best proposal put forward to attempt a change.
Yeah, at the outset, I'd say that I agree with the village manager that I think the sense of the board is that we do need a building board. All of our other sister communities have a building board, and one of the results of the comprehensive survey was confirmation that citizens want us to actually be more aggressive we want to be more proactive in making sure our buildings are maintained, and so there is concern about quality of building. The recommendations staff have made do largely echo the recommendations by Mr. West and Mr. Wilson, with a couple of things that I think I wanted to mention. First of all, that the recommendations are to have a panel of 5 members. I think that's a good idea. That means 3 would be a quorum. I think the current structure where there's kind of a pool, there may be a tendency for members to think that somebody else will be at the meeting and they don't have to be there, or that somebody else should be there. So I think having a set membership is a good idea. I think it'll help with more certainty of attendance. The one recommendation that Mr. West and Mr. Wilson made that is not in the staff's recommendation is that 2 of the 5 members be architects. I think that's a good recommendation, a good requirement to have in there, since, as they say, it's basically their function has to do with exterior architectural appeal. So I would like to see that the membership have at least 2 of the 5 members have architectural background. Having an appointed chair, that's a good idea. I think only meeting once a month is also a good idea. And may, with a different makeup of the membership and a set membership, they may want to change the time. That's up to them. I think right now it's 4:45 on Friday morning. That may not be convenient for all people who come before the building board. Elimination of the joint building board plan commission meetings. My understanding on that is that those meetings are required when there is a change to an institutional zone property, and the memo from Mr. West and Mr. Wilson suggests that those are redundant to have the building board attend, because the building board will does review any building permit in the institutional area anyhow. I would say, from my experience on the plan commission on the joint meetings, there may be some occasions where plan commission is asked to review or act on a application in an institutional area where there are aesthetic kinds of issues that we have been informed by building board, in the presence of building board members. I think when we reviewed the Cheswick, they looked at siding material or roofing material and that sort of thing, which, at least for me as a plan commission member, was very helpful. I would, and it's something that we couldn't really rely on the building inspector to provide. So I'm not sure what the implications are of eliminating those meetings. They don't happen very often, the joint meetings. You know, we have, and normally if we have one that's probably often as happens, we might have a couple of times. But I am concerned about sort of making a change in sort of the law of unintended consequences. That we realize that there's some benefit that we're losing that we don't see it at this point. I just don't know. The other thing that I wanted to comment on is limiting the scope of the building board. I think that's something that is merits looking at. I noted in reviewing Shorewood's building board ordinance that they limited somewhat. The suggestion to not have the building board consider replacement of doors or windows regardless of size. I don't necessarily agree with that because, and again, the Shorewood, as long as the Shorewood's building board doesn't look at a replacement of a door or window of the same size, but I think having replacing a window with a much larger window or even a much smaller window could raise some exterior architectural appeal issues that the building board would be the appropriate body to consider. So, in that case, I'd say, replacing a door or window with the same size is fine, but a different size is something that still should be presented to the building board. So I'm generally in favor of the changes. The one thing I would ask to think about is right now the building inspector basically acts as the de facto chair of the building board and also as a clerk. So if this is going to be structured as a typical board or committee, some thought should be given to who's going to be the clerk and minute taker on this body. But otherwise, I think these are good improvements. I think they just need a little more time.
Mr. Howard? I think I agree with Trustee Fonsatt, and the size does matter. But I'm wondering also, is this, I'm thinking just as a last resort that I would like the trustees to have final say on approving stuff that goes through the building board. So we might not get that situation that we have. Because I don't think that ever went through this board. It was just agreed upon in a committee. And now we have a fence on the property.
Well, it's your general view then that final decisions should come to the board.
I think we can have some oversight on those decisions. Even if it's just a matter of, yes, we approve the recommendation, but I think we should see some of the detail like we do the consent agenda and maybe take something
overseeing construction in the village, I think that that's gonna make our meetings about 10 hours long. I do think also, I agree with Trustee Pratt that size is absolutely an aesthetic issue. I think that one of my questions / concerns is if this proposal removes, it's limited to solely single-family residential. I've been on the building board numerous times where a commercial property has brought something forward, and I guess I wonder where that would lie, who would make those decisions. Like, for instance, there was a time where a business wanted to replace signs, and the building inspector was like, well, what's the problem? The problem was our sign ordinance actually didn't allow them to be replaced the way that the business wanted them to be replaced. So, and we caught that at the building board. We do have things with issues of materials and signage and things like that that are totally aesthetic, and given our very limited commercial nature of the village, I don't see it as arduous to continue to bring those to the building board. I also agree that eliminating the joint building board plan commission meetings is necessarily what I think is appropriate. I think that having those two bodies have a collective discussion has, in my opinion, been valuable. Quite honestly, it's two groups of people that have different professional experiences and different perspectives, and quite honestly, look at different things, but massage it together to come up with something that collectively is pretty much typically better than it came in. So I think that there's value in that. I am on the building board. I can't stress strongly enough that it does not function well, and it's kind of pathetic in that way. I think that we'll have to have training and retraining, because the building board, as it currently sits, does not at all address architectural appeal and function. It just does not, it never has. And so we would have to, I don't know how we train people around that. I don't know how clearly certain things are left to the eye of the beholder, certain things are common sense. I'm one of the non-architects on the board. I haven't, my background, I'm trained as an architect, but I'm not a licensed architect. I do think that it's important to have licensed architects on the board. I certainly agree with that. And, I think that one of the areas that we're also going to have to retrain people is it's a natural thought to think if you don't have to bring a project to the building board, it also means you don't need a permit. And I think we certainly have unpermitted projects that happen in the village. We used to catch most of them when we had to go through that occupancy sale, whatever it was called, thing that eliminated a couple of years ago. Thank you. Thank you. Code compliance, I'm told by my colleague.
Because it was called.
Yeah. And so we used to catch unpermitted projects at that point. We need to certainly understand that we're going to have to re-educate our people if we're going to be making changes, that it's not that the permitting requirements are different, it's just that the process is different. So that's what I have to say.
Before we get back to Mr. Constable, anyone else wish to make a comment? Yes, Mr. Ullman. Mr. Ullman.
Thank you. I just got one question. It says replacement of a door or window. Should it be doors or window, or does it make a difference?
Yeah, yes, it could, it's whatever you choose. Our goal here was just to kind of lay out some thoughts, and to discuss a little bit, so, no, but it could be absolutely full.
Anyone else on the board wish to speak on this issue? Before we get back to Mr. Fonstad, Mr. Pedersen, village manager, assistant village manager Pedersen is approaching the microphone.
It is.
Thank you.
Commissioner?
I just wanted two things just to keep in mind while I'm sitting back there listening. I do think that scope of work and frequency of meetings kind of need to be hand in hand. If you aren't going to limit the scope of work, having one meeting a month is going to potentially lead to a window replacement or a front door in a month for a wait. That's a very long time. Again, it's just something to think about. Also, the set panel of members. I do hope that we could get a set panel of members. I think if we did limit the scope and have one meeting a month, that would actually be feasible. But another thing just to think about, if you do want 2 architects, 3 makes a quorum, they want to have 3 architects so that there's not the possibility of not having an architect make up that quorum. Just something.
Yeah, I mean, if you have a minimum requirement of 2 architects, you don't always have more than 3, you know, to your point. But Trustee Sintek's point, I agree with her comments, and I would hope that if we have a structure where there's a set membership and there's a chair, that the chair will manage meetings and so that you know the proper focus is given on what's needed. I think right now, at least my observation is that it is kind of a relatively unstructured kind of meeting, and things kind of just. So I think if we make some structural changes, I'm hopeful that'll help that problem somewhat.
Yes, Ms. Sanchez.
In thinking about Mike's comments about doors and windows, part of the thought process of having something, and there's certain things that make up how you read a building. One of those is openings, one of those is rhythms, certainly details, like a plate glass window versus window with, a double hung window. Those are different things. And one of the things that we find regularly that happen are people just come in and they have no idea how something's built or constructed, which quite honestly is the building inspector's problem to figure out on site, really. I mean, they just think you cut a hole in the wall and you pop a window in. It's really not that simple, but I do think that fundamentally, the things that go into character and appropriateness and those types of things, it's, looking at context and it's looking at your neighbors and, all of your neighbors are 2 stories high. You may be able to build a 3-story building or a 4-story building, but it might look out of place. It's about roof lines and, sizing the windows and things like that. I think changing the size, changing a front door to, like not too long ago, having double front doors was super popular. That's it's not now, but it used to be not too long ago. You can drive around and see them. That's a very different look than a single door. I think that context is important. So changing, you can have a solid door, or you can have a door with like light panels in it. Those are clearly 2 different looks. That affects the overall feel of the building less than if you chop the hole bigger and make it bigger. So I think that to keep larger size entities as part of review is valuable.
Mr. Owen.
I got one question. If you come in to the building board, do you have to meet all these steps, or they just check them off? Do you have, like you see a site plan, so if somebody wants to put a door, change the door, or just one different size, you got to meet all these steps?
In theory, as well, yes.
Right.
Because those are our rules right now.
Yeah, right. But we're going to change these now.
Well,
I think that would be a
That's the
goal.
plan.
That would be part of the plan. Here's a question for the village attorney. I believe to move forward in this, we need a resolution. Is that correct?
Well, you need an ordinance. Okay, so you need to change the code in a few respects. And so I think this discussion is leading up to drafting an ordinance. I think there's some hazy areas. I mean, there's a lot of agreement that I'm hearing around some core principles, but I'm hearing some disagreement or uncertainty on some of the issues.
Well, here's what I'd like to do. If we're going to direct staff to draft an ordinance, at least based on the staff recommendations and the West memo, or the West Wilson memo, what I'd like to do on some of these elements that we have been discussing is just take a straw poll to see where the board is now. This isn't a final vote, but at least this will give some clear, more precise direction to staff to work off of and drafting an ordinance. That makes sense.
Can I throw out just one other thought on the question of single family only? There is a process under our zoning code in the D business district for what's called site plan review. It actually goes a little further. It talks about buildings having design or exterior appearance, and that can be reviewed by the Plan Commission in the site plan review. So I mention that because actually it's much more common in municipalities to have commercial review of architecture than residential review. So we're kind of flipping it if we're only doing the residential, not doing commercial. We do have an ability for the Plan Commission to do that now. I don't know if the Plan Commission's really rolled up its sleeves and done that in the past, but they could. That's for commercial. It's not for institutional. The institutional component is that joint meeting, which you would still, theoretically, could still have, even if the building board isn't going to review those ultimately in its review.
The thought was that the commercial, your point was well taken, and we had to think through that, but the thought was that the commercial people could be required to come either to the building board or the planning commission for their board, for their review. Again, we're trying, and I agree with all this discussions on aesthetics inside, but remember, I'm just cautioning and Eric, you and I and Michael talked about this, what the building board is really directed to do in the ordinance is not to balance out rhythms and windows and sizes. It has to do with economic impact, not necessarily about do we all agree about the size of the windows. So I get balance, and I get what people want to do, but I'm also trying to stick to the verbiage that's in the code and the verbiage that's in the court cases, which is where the code came from.
Well, to me, they're all related.
Mr. Fonstad?
Yeah, and I recognize that. I think the rest of the trustees do too. But there's also value in having applicants think about these issues and getting the benefit of having the building board point out things which they do. And I recognize that if push came to shove, and we didn't approve something and we got into the court battle, we would have to establish an economic impact on the village. But I just don't, I think that's kind of situation going to be few and far between if it ever happens. I think in the meantime, we're telling people in the village that we care about these things. We care about aesthetics.
All right, let's take this one by one.
Can I add something?
Yes, briefly.
I couldn't care less who has review of some commercial projects. I just care that they have oversight from somebody other than solely the building inspector.
Well, I think what the manager was saying is the planning commission.
Yeah,
has
to kick it to the
review
planning
of that.
commission is totally appropriate.
But that's the case now. It's not. It is.
Well, they come to the building board too.
Well, do commercial applications come to the building?
Yes. We were
They do. They go both places. But that's part of the recommendation is to not send it to you.
Yes, we reviewed Azura, we reviewed Mandel, the departments, we reviewed signs, all that stuff.
But they also need a plan commission.
Yep.
Yeah, part of the recommendation was to just go to the planning commission.
Okay.
Okay, all right, so, number one, by a show of hands, again, straw poll, who would be in favor of having a reconstituted, building board with a minimum of 2 architects as members? Okay, so, there is consensus there. Item number 2. By a show of hands, who is in favor of limiting the scope of review of the building board so same size doors and windows would not come before the building board for approval? There seems to be a consensus on that item. All right, by a show of hands, who believes that there continues to be value to have a joint meeting between the building board and the planning commission on institutional applications? All right, there seems to be consensus on that issue. Number 4, by a show of hands, who is content with having commercial applications come solely before the planning commission, but not before the building board? There seems to be consensus on that issue. Those are the ones I have. Does any other member think that there is another element that we should take a straw poll on?
Let's see. You've got it.
Thank you for your.
Yeah, when you're, yeah, that's fine. You got it.
All right, so then, yes.
You might want to touch on institutional as well. So the institutional would be handled in the joint meeting, but would it also go to the building board separately?
It's a good question. Would there be?
That currently happens.
That's what currently happens. There's a joint meeting, and then it goes to each body separately. Does it need to do that, or can it go just straight to the planning commission?
Yeah, I did not indicate support for having businesses go solely to the planning commission. Because I don't think the planning commission is equipped to look at aesthetic, architectural kind of features, and this also applies to institutional. I can remember when the Bradley Place went through remodeling, and building board brought up some very good points about the materials that were used, the type of roofing that was used, and that sort of thing. I don't know if we would have had that kind of discussion without having some architectural type people.
But just to clarify, this would be keeping the joint meeting.
Yes, I'm talking about.
Right, so there would be building board input
Right.
in this. It just wouldn't go back to the building board as an independent body to consider.
Yeah, I guess I'm just saying that I'm concerned that without having the building board look at commercial properties, businesses, you really lose that oversight.
Okay, but let's focus
So
on.
that's a different.
Yeah, that's a different question. Let's focus on institutional applications.
Well, my comment pertains to both, but I agree that this could be actually accomplished through training if we choose to. It can also be accomplished through the constitution if we choose to do that. Board members rotate off, they come up, and if things change, the composition of the board could change to adjust around differences of duties.
All right, then, by a show of hands, is there a consensus that in the case of institutional applications in which there is a joint meeting between the planning commission and the building board, the application would not have to then go back independently to the building board by a show of hands? All right, so there's a consensus there. All right, so I believe we have directed staff as to what a draft ordinance might look like, and we will put it on an upcoming agenda shortly. Thank you all. All right, we move to agenda item 4B, the comprehensive plan. Mr. Pedersen, the assistant village manager, the chair of the committee, you will report, please.
Thank you. I'll try to keep this brief. I know everyone behind me is waiting for that to start.
Sure.
The content committee did meet Tuesday morning. Your doctor was there to present survey results. Most of you were actually there. A few items worth noting. We had 718 completed surveys, which is actually a really great response rate for something like this. In that survey, we had 11 open-ended questions, which resulted in 136 pages of comments. And I have not been through all of these. There was 3,272 individual comments between all of the questions. Which is pretty incredible. I have posted the survey results, the presentation, as well as all 3,000 so on comments to the website. I would highly suggest you take some time and take a look at that. The next meeting will be held October 22nd.
We also will be, just so everybody knows, we are also going to provide a copy of the comprehensive plan survey to the planning commission, so they can just begin digesting it, because it is a meeting document. Because eventually it will come to them and they'll have to partake in this process once the special committee is handed off. So that will be happening.
Questions from the board? Seeing none, thank you. All right, we move to new business. 5A is consideration of a resolution supporting the North Shore Library renovation project. I'll ask the manager to speak on this and also, or possibly alternatively, our board member on the library board, Mr. Bonson.
I'll be very brief in there. This is a resolution that all the members are considering. Some have passed it already. And essentially what this does is give the foundation the ability to go out and start finding the money with the knowledge and secure that they have the support of the members of the library. So it's really, to me, not much more than that. We are in the process of finalizing a new library agreement, which you will probably get perhaps as early as next month. But this is simply to allow the foundation to have some, I guess, support behind it as they go through that.
Yeah, okay. In the past, the library director has come to our meetings, and she would have loved to have been at this meeting, but she is at the Wisconsin Library Association conference receiving the Program Innovation Award. So I think that's a good reason. As the manager indicated, the main reason for this resolution at this time is to enable the foundation to go full bore on the fundraising. There is the projected cost of the renovation is $4.4 million, and the foundation is committed to raise $1 million. So that effort will start shortly, and more specifically on November 15th at the library between 5:30 and 7:30 there is a private event that all trustees are invited to. There will be the architect will be there. There will be a presentation of the renovation program, and that is November 15th. It's a Friday, 5:30 to 7:30. That's just been set, so we're brand new. Couple comments to expand on what the village manager said about the process. The managers have been meeting with the library director for the last several months, trying to resolve a number of issues on the lease and the joint library agreement, and we had provided the managers with what was called a memorandum of intention that was has helped, I think, structure some of those discussions, but there's still some things that have to be resolved, and as I say, the managers are diligently working on that, and in the meantime, I hope that this board will support this resolution.
Any questions on the report? Mr. Constable, would you care to make a motion?
I move that we adopt the resolution supporting the renovation of the North Shore Library.
Second.
Second by Mr. Holman. Discussion. All in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. We move to 5, the presentation of the fiscal year 2018 audit. Ms. Hunter.
Thank you for having me here this evening. Apologize for the delay in getting in front of you. We did meet timely to go over the drafts with the audit committee and management. The reports were issued in June, and just due to calendar conflicts, this is the earliest we could get together. So I have provided a several-page handout. I'll use that to go through the financial information at a very high level. If you do have any questions, please feel free to ask. I'll be happy to address any questions during the presentation. So on the first page of the handout, I've included the audit results. We've issued a clean, unmodified opinion, highest level of assurance that you can obtain from us as your auditor. So that's a good thing. Included in the audit opinion, I just want to bring to your attention, there is an emphasis of matters paragraph for 2018 because of some new governmental accounting standards that were applicable to the village. That was GASB 75 and related to how the accounting and disclosures were for OPEBs or other post-employment benefits. So really doesn't change any of the day-to-day numbers, but did add some additional disclosures to your footnotes and that type of information. So nothing to draw your attention to there. Also, as I've noted in the past, there is a section of the audited statements following the independent auditor's report, which is management's discussion and analysis, a very good clip note version of what has occurred at the village for 2018. Turning to the next page, this is the summary financial information. I'm going to give you some page numbers as I go through this. There's a lot more detail in your audited statements, so you can look at that at your leisure. The first column there is your general fund. This is your day-to-day operating fund. This can be found on page 62 in a budget to actual comparison. This fund had revenues of $7.6 million. This compares to $6.9 million budget. So you were over $700,000 over budget. There's a couple of reasons for that. The largest reason is, if you recall, during 2018, you transferred money out of your inspection fund. You had some significant surplus there. You transferred $500,000 out of that fund into the general fund. That was not something that was budgeted for. We also had very favorable investment income returns. That was $71,000 over budget. So those are the largest portions of that. Your expenditures were relatively consistent with budget. $6.7 million of expenses actual compared to a $6.7 million budget. If you look at that page 62, you'll see some fluctuations in categories, but overall the general fund essentially broke even on the expenditure side. So overall, when you put together the 2018 village budget, you budgeted to add $221,000 to your fund balance. You actually added, as noted on the summary, $943,000. So a very favorable conclusion to 2018 for the general fund. That added to the beginning fund balance ended the general fund with over $3 million in fund balance as of the end of 2018. There's a small portion of that that's non-spendable. Those are items that sit on your balance sheet, so that's prepaid expenses and delinquent personal property. Those are items you haven't gotten the cash yet, and therefore, or you've spent the cash, and therefore those are non-spendable. The remaining portion, the 2.948, is noted on the bottom of this page, is what's referred to as unassigned. This is your working capital. That represents 44% of your operating budget and is a very strong financial position in your general fund, which is very good when you do go to the bond markets for borrowing for the village. The next two columns are found on page 6 of your statements. The capital project fund had a little bit over $1 million of revenue. Most of that was borrowing. During 2018, we borrowed for 3 reasons. One was for capital projects, that's $1 million. You also borrowed for your water utility, that was $200,000, and then $205,000 went into your stormwater utility. So borrowed roughly $1.4 million during the year. The capital project fund spent almost $1.2 million. Most of that was on road, or I shouldn't say most of it, half of that was on your road projects. And then you had some various equipment that was purchased during the year. You had the garbage packer, you had the contribution that goes to North Shore Fire, which was roughly $100,000, and then you had some squad cars and that type of thing. So overall, the capital project fund used up $100,000 of fund balance and had $460 as of the end of the year. Those are our funds on hand for future capital projects. The debt service fund, $1.6 million of revenue, most of that's levy. So you levy to make your principal and interest payments. The expenses were $1.5 million. I will note you'll see there that you added roughly $40-some thousand to your fund balance. That was the premium on the debt that was issued, and that went into the debt service fund to make interest payments. So overall, the debt service had an increase in fund balance of $48,000 and had $113 as of the end of the year. Those monies are restricted and can only be used for debt service purposes. The last column on this page is the non-major funds. These are the remaining governmental funds of the village. These can be found on page 74. But this is your inspection fund, your recycling fund, and your pool fund. Those 3 funds combined had $908,000 of revenue. $458,000 of that was inspection fees or building permit revenue that came in. $256,000 was recycling, and $111,000 was revenue from your pool. Those funds in total had $1.1 million of expenses, so expenses exceeded your revenues. Again, keeping in mind that in that $1.1 million there was $500,000 that came out of inspection into the general fund. So overall, those funds utilized $228,000 of fund balance and had $17,000 of fund balance as of the end of the year. You can see at the bottom of the page, there's 2 figures there, the $30,000 positive that is labeled as committed. That is mainly your recycling fund. There's a little bit of fund balance left in the pool, a little bit over $300 worth, but most of that is recycling. And then that deficit was just a timing issue of some expenses that ran through the inspection fund. So it was deficit as of the end of 2018, but has already been resolved during 2019 with additional revenue sources. Turning to the next page are the last 3 funds of the village. These are the 3 utilities. Just a couple items to note on these 3. The water and sewer utility are the first 2 columns there. Both of them saw a decline in the amount that was added to net position for 2018. Not significant, but again, there was some fluctuation in revenues and the related costs within those funds. The water utility saw a decrease of roughly $155,000 in what was added to net position. We had a decrease in revenue during 2018. We also had some additional costs for maintenance and that type of activity. The water costs were up slightly over the previous year. So overall, the water utility added $370,000 to net position at $9.2 million. Very large number, keeping in mind that that also includes all your equipment and infrastructure. Of that $9.2 million, $1.2 million is cash and is all unrestricted. So that's probably the more important takeaway from that. Sewer utility added $260,000 to net position, down from $401,000 in the previous year. Again, the main reasons for that were additional MMSD charges, just an increase in the cost associated with that, and then some additional costs or fluctuation in the private lateral grant program during the year. Of the $5.9 million of net position in that fund, $864,000 is cash, and is again all restricted. Lastly, the stormwater utility, $235,000 added to net position. That's actually up over the previous year by roughly $50,000. And one of the main contributing factors in your stormwater is you did get the $100,000 Lake Michigan grant during 2018, so that contributed to that positive increase. Of the $2 million of net position, $403,000 is cash. After page 11 in your financial statements, I'm not going to go into this in detail, but there is cash flows for each of those utilities, and I would encourage you to take a look at those and keep an eye on that. You positively cash flow from operations, but in 2018 there were some significant capital activities, so you used and had the cash to utilize some of those projects, but on a go-forward basis, you want to keep an eye on that type of activity. On the next page, just a couple other quick points from the financial statement standpoint. Included on page 37 of your footnotes is the summary of your long-term obligations. $11.6 million of long-term obligations related to the governmental activities, $2.6 million for business type, which is again our water, storm, and sewer. Overall, as noted previously, you did borrow during the year, so there was some increase in those long-term obligations, but you also paid down principal on your long-term debt, $1.3 million roughly within your, $1.3 million in your governmental funds, and then roughly $292,000 in your utilities. So you borrowed some, but you paid down more than what you had actually borrowed. The village has the ability to borrow 5% of its equalized value, which is the next bullet on this page. That equates to roughly $57 million. You had $12 million of GO debt outstanding, so the difference between those is your borrowing capacity. So you have a very strong borrowing capacity at roughly $45 million as of the end of 2018. Lastly, on the last page of the handout, as part of the audit process, we also issued a communication document that you do have in a bound format. Again, that's where the document we utilize to communicate any comments, recommendations, anything that arises from the audit. Very consistent with previous years. We still have a point included in there regarding the fiscal agent for the library, and I understand that may be changing. Also has some information in there regarding cash collection points within the village. That's just a reminder. There are some new governmental accounting standards, or GASBs, that will be effective for the village in the upcoming years, which I believe will have minimal impact, but we will work with management to make sure those get addressed as needed. I have included a paragraph on that page with my contact information. I've gone through this very quickly, but happy to talk with any of you in more detail, but I'd also be happy to answer any questions you may have at this time.
Questions for Ms. under Mr. Kravitz and then Ms. Simchich?
The $2,948,794 that's unassigned, that's cash, I guess. It said represent 44% of our operating.
Of your operating budget. So if you look at your general fund expenditure budget, that's 44%.
So in your opinion, how good is that?
That's very good.
What
We typically look for that to be somewhere between 10 and 25%. I mean, that would be a range we would say is an appropriate range to be able to pay your bills and have some resources if something would arise. However, as I mentioned when I said that, is one of the things to look at is that type of fund balance situation is a very positive item when you go out to the bond market. And you go out to the bond market relatively frequently, at least every other week, once a year, every other year. So that helps you get a better rating and helps keep your interest costs down.
Ms. Simchich?
Well, as chair of the audit committee, I just want to say thank you for another wonderful year. It's always fascinating, and we have a great committee. I want to thank them as well. And yeah, totally hoping that our trustees or any members of the audience ask any questions they have.
Mr. Fonstad?
Yeah, thank you. Another very helpful presentation. Couple little questions, and it might be the manager before you respond. In the credit risk section, we do note that we have investments with the Wisconsin Local Government Investment Pool. We don't quantify that. I'm just trying to remember how much of the money we have invested that way.
If you look at page 28,
28, okay.
go to the table, second line down to 14.3 million.
I got it, LGIP.
Yep.
So we have 14 million, 361,
That was as of the end of the year.
and so that's the Wisconsin Local Government Investment.
That is correct.
You didn't really comment on the credit risk in that, I guess. Do you have a comment on the credit risk on that?
From the standpoint of,
I mean, the state it ought to be very good for that.
yes, it's very good. The reason that we say in here that under credit risk where we reference that, we just need to say if it's rated by standard and we just, it's not. So that we don't have anything negative to say.
Yeah, my
about it.
second question is on the water utility. There was some discussion in the last couple of years of having some major expenditures for the storage tanks, and I just wanted to know what the status of that is, and whether, I mean, they have $1.2 million in cash. We have it in the water utility. I don't know how that plays in.
You know, we did, the storage tank was done about the same time I started. They were finishing up some things right when I started. So our storage, if you're talking about our storage tank back here, that's
No, I'm talking about the North Shore Water Utility.
the North Shore Water Commission is undertaking, I know they're auditor, is undertaking a project, and we have been over the last number of years setting aside money for capital improvements. They're going to do the reservoir project, so if you go by the Water Commission plan, you may not know, you see that grassy area, the grassy knoll, it's a Bruder film, and that's where the reservoirs are underneath that grass. Two, if I make sure this right, two of those are coming out, two are going to be improved because there's a barrier or ring around the cover that sits on top of those that is dated that needs to be taken out. We're going to redo it. Of that contribution, right now it looks like, and we haven't bid it, we haven't done any of the work, we're at the 90% drawings, we're out of time frame with SEH and with Strand. They're the two consulting agents we're working with. And it looks like, I'm hoping this $1.45 million is about what the cost is going to be. I believe the number that's in the capital fund is $1.1-ish million, just under $1.1 million. So that money's already set aside. The balance of it, which is going to be, call it $400,000, will be given up amongst the members, the owners of the North Shore Water Commission based upon their pro-rata share. So we will have an exposure to that, and we should. At this point, we haven't really decided if we're going to use cash for it, if we're going to bond for it. Again, we have historically low interest rates with AAA bond rating. It may make some sense to bond for it because it is a long-term capital asset. We're just not at that point yet. Okay, Jerry?
Yeah, no, I wanted magnitude and sort of time frame. Not clear on the time frame.
The time frame, DNR has actually required us to do, we're getting two answers from DNR and PSC.
Only two?
Well, two different answers. We're supposed to have it done by the end of 2020, which is next year. Right now, that's kind of where we are on our time frame. Unfortunately, they have a statutory review period of 90 days, and DNR does. The DNR has told us, we learned at our meeting yesterday, that, well, it may take 180 days, which pushes the project back. But then the other side is saying, well, we're not going to extend the date. Now, my gut tells me that the December 31 deadline, they're probably not going to be willing to change that unless and until they have to. I mean, if we get to like June, July, and they're saying, oh my God, this isn't going to happen, then maybe they'll deal with it. I think right now they're just all kind of in a holding pattern. So that's kind of the time frame for that.
Thank you.
Other questions from Ms. Unger? Ms. Dunker, thank you very much.
Thank you.
An informative and comprehensive report. 5C, the pool survey results. We have to invite Joseph Sarah up to give the pool survey results. Mr. Sarah.
Good evening. I'm going to go over to the computer, if that's all right with you folks, and walk through the slides.
Just take the microphone with you, please.
Okay.
Thank you.
So, my name is Joseph Sarah. I'm the research director at Neighborhood Analytics, and I'm here to discuss the results of the Village of Fox Point Municipal Pool Survey.
Dr. Is that on? That would be microphone on.
Oh,
On the bottom.
better? Hello?
No, that's off.
I assure you that it is on. Hello?
Should you just use this one?
Seems like this one's dead.
All right.
How's that? Okay. So just a little bit of background about our firm. So we're scientists, teachers, or public servants by training, and we formed this company in order to address unmet needs in the public sector related to data. So what we do, we have a fair amount of experience looking at general organizational problems and turning them into more focused organizational questions that can yield answers that can actually be acted on. And from those questions, we can help you understand what kind of data you need to collect in order to get a handle on what you're facing. Once you know what you need, we can help you get it, whether through surveys, focus groups, direct measurement, and we can help you plan on how to store that data, move it, transform it, and report on it. And we can help you understand the resulting data. So if there's a thing that you're trying to understand, say turnover or satisfaction with services, performance, we can help identify what drives that thing. And if the thing that you understand lies at the end of a complicated process, we can untangle that and help figure out the independent influence of each contributing factor in the process and help you understand how those contributing factors interact to produce outcomes. So we can make complicated processes more understandable and help you communicate that understanding to people that are also stakeholders in the end result. And we can also help predict future outcomes. So instead of constantly being in a reactive stance, you can change to a proactive stance and sniff out potential problems before they emerge. And while I have your attention, I'd like to point out that we have a lot of experience dealing with large corpuses of open-ended results from surveys. So if you find yourself overwhelmed by the results of your comprehensive plan, open-ended results, talk to me and maybe we can help you out with that. All right, so the current Fox Point Village Pool was constructed in 1968, and over the last 2 decades, the village has conducted a number of studies aimed at evaluating the lifespan of the current facility, patterns of use, and need for new or updated facilities. And as a result of these studies, village, is this one working now? Okay, hello? All right, village policymakers have determined that the village pool will need to undergo major restoration, reconstruction, or be decommissioned. And so the most recent study in 2019 incorporated public input and yielded a number of specific development options designed around the express needs of the community. And so the purpose of this project, the survey project, was to help Fox Point policymakers understand resident preferences regarding these pool development options. So specifically, we wanted to measure demand for the continued presence of the village managed pool in Fox Point. We wanted to measure preferences related to potential pool locations. We wanted to look at preferences related to potential pool features and tolerance for spending related to the construction of a new pool. So working with Fox Point officials, in order to make these measurements, we settled on a mixed method survey of all Village of Fox Point households. So invitations to participate in the survey were distributed to every village household via the waste collection survey service flyers, and each flyer included directions for participating in the survey online, as well as directions for filling out a paper copy of the survey in person at Village Hall. and respondents were asked to return one completed survey per household. So the Fox Point partnered with not only our firm, but the Strategic Research Institute at St. Norbert College in order to complete this project. So we handled the design of the survey and analysis and reporting, but SRI handled translating that survey design into an online format and hosting the online survey. So data collection went from July 20th of this year until August 26th, and we received 935 valid responses, which equates to about 34% of all Fox Point households. So we also received an additional 135 responses that were flagged as invalid due to multiple responses from the same IP address. Now, flagging and removing these was a necessary step in order to prevent ballot box stuffing, but we recognize that there can be legitimate differences in opinion between adult members in a single household, and we also realize that it is not necessarily fair from a democratic perspective to give households with multiple people the same weight as single-member households. So we took a few steps to ensure that no one's voice was unduly diminished or muted. So in the report, we tabulate responses in 3 ways. So first, we report on the results where it's based on one valid response per household. Second, we do that again, but in this time we weight the household based on the number of reported adults in the household. And third, we tabulated the results based on all responses. And so these are all, you can see all of these results in the body of the survey, or the body of the report and the appendix to the report. And the most important thing here is that we did not find any significant or substantively important differences across these 3 sets of results for any question on the survey. And there are a couple reasons for that. So the first is that public opinion when it comes to the pool is pretty clear. And the second is that it just turns out that the folks who were eliminated through having multiple responses when we're looking at one per household, the distribution of their responses pretty much mirrors the overall distribution from all of the valid responses. So, it's an interesting point there. So in this presentation, I'm going to present and discuss just unweighted households as a unit of analysis. And please, if there are any questions or anything's unclear, feel free to stop me and ask questions. There's no need to wait till the end. So respondents were asked a pair of demographic questions in order to explore whether or not important differences in opinion exist across different kinds of households within the village of Fox Point. So first, respondents were asked to indicate how many adults age 18 or older currently reside within their household. And so this figure shows that about 72% of responding households had 2 adults, while 15% contained 1. About 10% contained 3, and 2.7% of responding households indicated that 4 or more adults lived in the household. Respondents were also asked to indicate whether or not they had children aged 17 or younger currently residing in their household, and this figure shows that about 44% of households reported having minors, while just over 56% reported having only adult residents. So households responding to the online survey were categorized by their day of garbage collection, which corresponds roughly to set geographical areas within the village. So households which filled out a paper survey were asked to indicate which day their garbage collection normally occurs on. And tabulating those responses. This table shows that the frequency of responses by garbage collection day zone, about 32% of responding households were located in Zone 1, which is roughly the southern section of the village, containing Longacre Park and adjacent to the current pool site. About 24% of households were located in Zone 2, which encompasses much of the south central portion of the village and is also adjacent to the current pool site. About 23% of responding households were located in Zone 3, which encompasses much of the north central portion of the village, and about 21% of respondents were located in Zone 4, which is the northwesternmost portion of the village, including a thin spur that juts southward into the central village. So the first substantive section of the survey was intended to help policymakers better understand the landscape of community opinion and the strength of resident feelings regarding the future of the village pool. So over on the right, you can see a stacked bar that shows the distribution of responses to this question here. So they were a survey, responding households were presented with a statement, which was Fox Point should continue to feature a village pool. And then they were asked to either strongly agree, disagree, or strongly disagree. So over on the right, you can see that among all responding households, a majority of them said that they strongly agree with the statement. And when you include agree, it's over 75%, while about 12 to 13% either disagreed or strongly disagreed. So if you move over the two columns in the middle there, that shows the breakdown across households with minors or without minors. So you can see that there's a lot more support for a village pool or I should say support is stronger for the continued existence of a village pool among households with minors, which probably isn't a surprise given that kids like swimming. And then you can see the breakdown across the different geographical zones, and there's not a lot of variation there. So the next general statement that households were asked to evaluate was this: a property tax increase to fund development of a new village pool would be acceptable. And you can see that when you add together those who say strongly agree and agree, it makes up the majority of responding households. But put this way, support was a little more lukewarm than just asking about whether or not the households wanted to see a pool. So the interesting thing is when you combine responses from both of those. So this figure shows the combined support and opposition for both the pool and tax. So the green section shows people who said that they either strongly agreed or agreed with the statement that the village should continue to feature a pool, and they either strongly agreed or agreed that it would be acceptable to have a tax to fund development of a new pool. The yellow section shows people who express support for a pool but opposition towards a tax increase. And then the red section shows folks who indicated that or households that indicated that they oppose both a pool and a tax. The last question in this general section basically asks households to state their preference for a pool site. So they were asked whether they would like to see a village pool at the existing site or at Longacre Park. You can see over on the right it shows the breakdown of responses across all responding households. So about 79% said that they would prefer to have a pool at the existing site, while 21% said that they would prefer it at Longacre Park. And there's a little bit of variation across the different zones. You can see that Zone 2, they had the most households saying that they'd like to see a pool at Longacre Park, but across all zones, a clear majority of households indicated they would prefer the pool to be at the existing site.
What zone is Longacre in?
I'm sorry?
What zone is Longacre in?
I believe it is in Zone 1. So I'll just back up a slide.
It is.
Is it one?
And the current site kind of sandwiched in between Zone 1 and Zone 2, if I'm not mistaken. Okay. So after being asked about general preferences regarding the future of the village pool location and development financing, responding households were presented with 5 specific development options and asked to rank them in order of preference. And so the options are as follows: a large pool at the existing site, a small pool and splash pad at the existing site, a small pool and splash pad at Longacre Park, and a large pool at Longacre Park, and then of course no pool. Just want to point out that for the online version of the survey, the presentation of the development options was randomized in order to prevent any kind of question item bias from influencing the results in case people just felt like getting through it quick and clicking on the first option. That tendency would be randomly distributed across the 5 options. We wanted to make sure that that wasn't going to happen. So for each of the first 4 options, proposed pool features were outlined, an estimated construction cost was presented, and contingent property tax increases expressed as dollars per 1,000 in assessed value were presented. And each option also had associated architectural rendering and detailed map. And then for the no pool option, details regarding the likely financial impact of that option were laid out. So we used a procedure called ranked choice voting to determine a joint prioritization of all development options that gives every responding household's complete preference ordering the highest possible influence. And so the way this method works, the future of a pool in Fox Point is higher among households who have a preference for a large pool.
Right. Is another takeaway for this, because when we started the presentation, we saw roughly 80% of the total respondents preferenced a pool at the current location as their first choice.
Yeah.
But with regard to enthusiasm, if we take a look at large pool at the existing site and a large pool at Longacre, that gap seems to narrow considerably. And in other words, 73.5 to 67.3 in the first bar.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tell us?
I think that you probably would have to explicitly ask people to get to know this for sure, but I think that a fair takeaway would be that the existence of the pool may be more important than its location for a substantial portion of people. Now, that question was not explicitly asked, but I think that your observation and this kind of lends some credence to that.
Mr. Craven?
In your experience of doing this, would having actual cost numbers have possibly affected this data? What I'm saying is that the large pool at the current site might be, I'm just pulling up numbers, $3 million.
Yeah.
Whereas a large pool at Longacre might be $1.5 million.
Sure, and that information was built into the survey. You're asking, would that influence the results? And my response to that would be absolutely. I mean, so in order for, everyone has predispositions towards various policies, but they can't turn those predispositions into clear policy preferences unless they have information. And so my expectation would be that the presence of information detailing cost would definitely temper support where there was uncertainty about the cost ahead of time, right? Because you're just going to get a section of people who don't really have an understanding of how much things cost. You're going to have people who, and those folks are going to be, the preferences are going to be less informed. So yes, I mean, any time that you add information into the mix, it's going to influence the responses to a survey.
What was the projected property tax when people said funded by property tax? Was there, I forgot, I filled out that thing a long time ago.
Sure.
Was there a proposed or a projected property tax increase, like per 100,000 or something?
Yes, it was expressed in dollars per 1,000 in assessed value. And each, if I'm remembering, each option had an estimated overall cost, and then it had an estimated increase. It had actually 2 different ones. So there was an option for, I believe, 15-year and 30-year. I may be mistaken about those. It was 10 and 20. Okay, I apologize. 10 and 20 years. But yeah, there was certainly information about the cost built into every option, and then there was also information about what the projected outcomes would be if no pool was the policy outcome.
Mr. Fonstad?
Yeah, I'd be interested in your comment on one of the questions statements in this questionnaire, and that troubled me because it struck me as misleading. And that was in the option E, the no village pool, was a statement that property tax rate unaffected. And what bothered me about that is, right now we subsidize the pool by about $150,000 a year. And so although the property tax, we probably wouldn't change the property tax because, as is pointed out, we have plenty of uses for that money other than the pool. But by saying that the property tax is unaffected, it ignores the fact that if you have one of the other options, there is an impact. So the tax rate impact of no pool is not having to raise taxes to build a pool. So I thought it was misleading, and it really bothered me when I read the questionnaire.
Okay, so I think this might have gone out on me again. Hello? Okay, I'll just try to speak up. So if I understand your point, you are saying that because, so like there's a zero-sum game at work where it's either going to be no pool or there's going to be some form of development. And there's either going to be some kind of property tax increase, but if no pool is selected, there won't be an increase. And you thought that it was misleading to say that there would be that current property tax rates would be unaffected. Do you have an alternative as to what you think it should have said? You think it should have said that they would be lower?
It didn't acknowledge that if you chose something other than the no pool choice, then there would be a tax increase. So it led it to believe, it's by not having a pool, you avoid having to increase taxes to pay for a pool. And it didn't, it made it sound like there's no tax consequence to having to not having a pool, and there is a tax consequence.
I don't agree that saying that there is no increase is the same as saying that there's no tax consequence. I think if the survey would have said no tax consequence, I think you would I would agree on that point, but the fact is that each option clearly lays out what the change to the tax would be, and for a pool, unless I'm mistaken, there would be no tax increase. So, I mean,
I understand what you're saying, I understand that, but it just struck me when I read it that saying that it would have no effect, wasn't a complete story.
yeah. So I just want to assure you that while we were writing these questions, we were fully engaged with the pool committee and the village manager and assistant manager. So
we wanted to make sure that, and we spent a significant amount of time talking about this, we didn't want the assumption to be that if there was no pool, that there would be a tax decrease. Because that would not be necessarily an accurate statement either. So we thought what we presented, given the fact that the other selections gave the economic impact to the taxpayers, that this verbiage was fairly clear. It still allowed, for example, if it had no pool and there was a tax increase. Maybe there was, because there are all sorts of metrics and inputs that job with tax rates. But given the fact that the rest of the choices had the economic impact, we thought that's the choice that we made.
Here's how I'd like to proceed from here. I'd like to give the other board members an opportunity to ask questions. I'd like to ask the staff to comment about the survey. We'll hear from citizen comment after that. I know Ms. Hurley has reserved some time if she wishes to speak. And we'll take it from there. Mr. Corrado?
Yeah, I just want to enter committee meeting as well too. We were trying to clarify the response rate, which regardless, the response rate was very strong, exceptionally strong. In the report, it had it as 34%. But that was based off of a census that we found out, but probably included citizenry was more than even the multi-unit properties. And if you took actually just taxing units, that the number was more closer to 2,200. And that actually put the response rate, in terms of taxing units, the response rate would be in the mid-40%.
Yeah, we based that figure that I showed in the second or third slide on the Census Bureau's estimate of households in Fox Point. So if that figure doesn't gel well with the actual number of households that the survey was delivered to by the garbage collection agency, then yeah, I would agree that that's probably correct.
Yeah, and I think it's fine for this. I just want to clarify what it's like. So the important part of that is that, again, the garbage collection didn't go to the large multi-unit rental properties. Those were privately collected. And so you really kind of take that out on the response rate, but putting it in the mid-40%, that's really exceptional.
Anyone else from the board have questions about the survey? Seeing none, I'll ask staff to comment. We'll start with the manager, then go to the assistant manager. And maybe you could focus part of your comments to what you think it would mean financially and staffing-wise if the village board selected a large board location.
Well, Michael has talked many times about, start with the staffing models. Let me start with the financial model. Michael will let you talk about the staffing models. I think we included in front of you just some estimated debt service amortizations as given the site. So we have the top one is a large pool existing site. We did 10 years and 20 years. It should look like this. It's got the bear logo on it. And then we did option 2, which is a small pool, splash pad and such at the existing site, 10 and 20 year ends. And you can just walk your way through it, you guys can read it. But the top 2 are, given the results of the survey, were the strongest responses from our citizens for that. And so you can look on there, just these are, and the coupon rates, if you want to get to the technical coupon rates, I don't know what we would pay. We kind of just threw all expenses in there. We didn't get too fancy with the amortization. We just kind of straight lined it and tried to come up with a number for you. But generally you get better rates on 10-year notes than you do 20-year notes, and we're looking at debt service in the neighborhood of $550,000 a year on the 10-year for the large pool existing site, and about $300,000 is some change in 20 years for the large pool existing site. Now this assumes the $4.7 million estimated cost that was in the survey. It also assumes that there's no private money thrown into it. It's a wholly public finance thing. We did not want to assume, if the board wanted them to do that, we did not want to assume any numbers. Like they wanted us so much private money, we just did this for a ballpark. And Michael would want to walk up all that one. This is our annual debt service for the village, and Wendy just went through it, but our annual debt service for the village is about $1.5 million per year for everything. So this would be about 30% of our total village debt service number on the 10-year round, and 15%, yeah. What's that? Without, this is debt service, without the operating loss.
That
That's
was
correct.
my next point, and I think there was some change.
And Eric said it before, we do lose currently around $150,000 a year, give or take.
What is your estimate about how much we would lose with a new pool?
Well, you can always buy the if you build it, they will come thing. That's kind of a wish and a prayer, because the demographics that we have in the community are what they are. I mean, we closed Dunwood School because we didn't have bodies to put in the seats. And, when this pool was built, it was, as I told Michael, Woody and Kevin riding their bicycles on the Wonder Years, and that's not what that's not the kids we have anymore. So I do think there's a very, very strong chance that we would lose at least that much. And I think, as Michael will talk about the staffing cost, we would probably have to have a higher staff count, which would conceivably drive our staffing costs higher. I don't think our insurance costs would appreciably change. they'd probably stay flat. You could, you know, it'd be a little bit bigger pool, a little more efficient. All it would be brought up to date because our current pool was grandfathered in some ways, but that would actually kind of be a bump. But I think the biggest issue is the deficit thing would be the amount of staff we would have to pay, and I'll turn over to Michael, but whether or not we actually even get the staff.
Yeah, I'll start with the staffing. There's a few things I do want to highlight. In regards to staffing, it is getting increasingly more difficult to staff a pool. We hire just over 25 lifeguards every year, 6 or 7 front box, and 3 managers, which is difficult to keep. They're just, it's the age, kids are programmed, kids are going off to college, people really aren't standing there. So and we're not alone. This is all what we've seen in the papers. We're just losing lifeguards. So even at our existing lifeguard level, we are struggling. This last year, I started hiring in February because I have to, because we have to compete for the remaining lifeguards that are there. There's pools that are community pools that are closing down, county pools. It's an epidemic and it's happening. We're looking at another 50-year pool. Can't tell you if that trend will come back, but that will be a popular job or that things will change, but it's really something to consider. Given the results of this long pool existing site, I do want to bring up parking. We have a room for, I forgot what it was, about 70 some odd spaces. If it is a larger facility, I do want to recognize that the larger the facility, I think the larger radius of people that will come. So while we do want a lot of people to come for the revenue for the, is this working again?
I turn it on. Get the battery.
So again, while we do want a lot of people to come, because that would obviously help out our operating revenue, parking will become an issue on either site. Again, from a staffing perspective, currently we have the Longacre Pavilion, which we use for elections from 0 to 4 or 5 times a year. We rent it out sporadically. The ice rink, if it opens, we use it, and that's if it opens. And then we have our pool, which runs for about 3 months. So we are maintaining, as a staff, 2 facilities that they're very underutilized. So I think that's something worth noting. Last thing is that when we talk about a small pool, it still has a 4-lane lap line. We can still provide swimming lessons. We can still provide swim team. We can still do water ballet. The only thing that we might not be able to do is dive team, and might just obviously I know. But I think we had 7 participants this last year, and that's about average. And that's not me saying I prefer one pool over the other. Us as staff, whatever you guys decide, we'll do our best to make it happen. I just think those things are definitely worth noting in your conversation.
So a couple things that I think are interesting. We hear regularly from residents about around a lot of issues, that we are a community with families with small children. And I was in the comp plan meeting this week, and then I've been on the pool committee as well. And it's interesting because our data from the people who have responded to the surveys, which actually is a similar number, and they're distributed evenly, actually, in the different areas of the village, almost exactly survey to survey. The people who are answering the surveys, which I have to believe is representative of our population, that data is actually saying that we're not. And it's saying that we have less families with children in the village than people perceive us to have, or maybe wants to have. I'm not sure what the right thing is. I find that to be a curious difference between what I normally hear and what the data that we receive is saying. And I find it also, like this handout that I'm sure was Mike that put together, I find it like shocking to see our memberships and our programming, to see the plummeting of those numbers. Part of it is, we have a subpar facility, and there are other people that have way better facilities. So we have to assume that we're losing some of those to nicer places, and that some, new facilities always have a bounce up. Most, I don't care if you're talking about an amusement park, a zoo, a park, whatever, they have an increase. Most do not maintain an increase, and most historically dip down to where they were, or sometimes lower over a couple of years. The one place that we've dramatically improved, which is like astonishing too in a lot of ways, is the point of sale. I mean, that's the one place that's like really knocked it out of the park, and I think that that's awesome. It must be that barbecue on Fridays.
Well, I think we also probably in the past did a frankly terrible job of
Oh, there's no
reporting
question.
on sales. We had issues and.
There's no question that we've done a bad job providing and a bad job reporting it and capturing it and all those things. But I'm optimistic that that is actually significantly improved. So that shows, certainly putting into place better systems. But I find these numbers to be illustrative. It's 200 resident households of, either one or multi-family, multi-people. So less than 10% of our households are utilizing this pool. And that's dropped from, it's not dropped a ton. You look at 5 years ago, all these other numbers are dropped. It's gone from, 100 and, well, it's about the same actually. So, but it's 200 households that are regularly using it. Do you have any information? And I know we've only just done this in the last couple of years about day passes. Increase, decrease, stay the same?
No, day passes do increase, obviously as the word gets out that you can do the day pass, and would probably attribute that to the lower non-resident memberships. I think when people sit down and do the math, and given Wisconsin weather, we might as well, every time we go, just pay for a family pass. So this last season, we actually reduced the non-resident, hoping to get more memberships. Because if we do have a chilly summer, we're just out of luck. And we did. We had a pretty horrible June.
For sure.
And that's really when people make that decision to get an all-season pass. Once you get to mid-June, late June, that's the end. You're not going to get a season pass, especially as a non-resident, of $350 for 2 months. Yeah.
Well, and I did have a lengthy conversation with somebody this summer who was very cognizant of the fact that the audience that we were drawing was coming from a wider selection of population, and said that repeatedly their experiences were that it was changing the character of the pool, and that we fundamentally had to decide if we were a pool for Fox Point or if we were a regional pool. They are different things, and I think that our numbers show and have historically shown that the people that come in from elsewhere for family passes from Whitefish Bay or whatever, or swim teams, for all these other activities, they're actually the ones that are maintaining the level of support that we have in the pool in many ways. I mean, our residents are not. It's just an interesting thing to think about.
Our programming is fantastic. We get great guards, we have great staff, we really, really do. We still do require a annual membership if you do want to be part of any one of the 4 programs. So I can assume if we didn't require that, our non-resident would be even worse. I'm guessing all those people want their kids to participate in swim lessons, swim team, water ballet, or dive team.
Mr. Carver?
Also on these numbers, I find it interesting, all the things that Trustee Simonic said, but also that the membership, with these numbers, the resident family membership went up from 2018 to 2019, but the revenue for memberships went down. And the programming, which is, I would think, ad hoc fees that would attract better lifeguards or better personnel is not there. And now we're gonna put $3 million and have to pay $500,000 a year to have these numbers exasperated. So I was a big fan of the pool. Honestly, I'm turning into not a fan of the pool.
If I could just comment real quick, we did start this year, staff family memberships are always free, so sometimes you see a variation in memberships and revenue. Also, if you, we did this in 2019, if you had purchased a home, first-time home buyer in Fox Point within the last year, we did give you a free membership to try to get you to, we're trying all we can to attract traffic so that in the event that we do have another pool, new pool, they'll come back. Because we have been losing people and spending a lot of money and having them find somewhere else to go is not a reality.
Mr. Bonstead?
Yeah, I mean, another feature of the staffing issue that you've made clear to us in the past is that, I mean, these are college students, so that limits the season for the pool. But the other thing that you just mentioned is the weather. You know, having a pool within half mile of Lake Michigan is problematic. Do you know how many days the pool is open this year?
I would have to look at the bulletin of our dates. Not even 3 months.
No, I mean, that's the other thing that...
You mean how many days out of the season we actually open and close for the day?
We have to go back and monitor.
Yeah, actually, I have that data. I would just have to collect it, but we do frequently cancel days and programs.
And when the weather's bad, well, I mean, that's another factor. I mean, it's not surprising to me that people like the idea of having a pool and like the idea of having a large pool. But you know, when you think about the number of people who use it and the number of days that it's available for use, and then put that by the dollar, it makes you pause. I mean, from thinking about this in the concept of in the context of the comprehensive plan, it seemed to me that long term, Fox Point needs to attract young families, and we do have an existing housing stock that would support that because we have a wide range of houses, and but demographics tell us we're on a downtrend on that, and that's really concerning to me. You know, for the pool, but also generally for the future strength and vitality of the village.
Before we get too farther along, I'm going to ask for public comment on the pool survey. Would any members of the public like to address the board on the survey? Ms. Herman?
Well,
Please step up. You got to state your name and your address, please. You can wait for verification.
Hi, Sandy Hurley, 7334 North Longacre, in the front yard of Longacre Pavilion. First of all, I asked the board to respect the results where 80% of the people wanted the pool, if we built the pool, in the current site, and not at Longacre. I mean, that was clear. That's what they wanted. We did the survey for a reason. And I would ask that you respect that, and that the pool, if we build the pool, be at the current site. And I could go into a million reasons, especially where it is right now. It is in a perfect location, by railroad tracks, by the village hall, by the bank, setback, a boulevard street. Traffic pattern isn't crazy. someone just mentioned voting at Longacre. I'll tell you, just voting day at Longacre is just crazy with the traffic on Longacre. It's just horrible. And I can't imagine, especially if you're building a bigger pool and you're trying to attract other people, what the traffic pattern would be. And that's a concern. I don't know if any of you live in that area, but people are constantly walking with their children and their buggies and their dogs around that park all day long. And then, of course, when school lets out, granted, there isn't school in the summer when the pool is open, then there's a lot of children. And I think, it's interesting that Whitefish Bay, Glendale, Bayside, River Hills, none of them have a pool in that they're attracting families. And I don't know why we feel that we need a pool to attract families or children. I don't know if that's true or not. I don't have any minor children, so I can't say. But have you ever looked into the fact that they don't feel they need a pool? Now, granted, the results said that we want a pool. That was pretty, clear that everyone said they wanted a pool. But I also don't think, after listening to the people today, that they understand that the actual cost of the pool and all the things that you brought up today, would they really want a pool if they knew that? And then, maybe as a suggestion, if you want a suggestion, we just close the pool for a year and see what happens. How many people complain? Do they really miss it? And then do they have a different opinion? Do they want a small pool because they want a pool, the tax dollars they can afford, or not? So it's just, maybe that's one option. I know I'm crazy, but maybe that's one option. But I just ask you to respect your decision. If you do a pool, that you do it at the current site and not at Longacre, because that's what the people clearly voted for, and that's what we asked them. Thank you.
Would any other member of the public like to?
Well, I'm not signed up yet, as usual. I'm not signed up. I always say I'm going to talk. Well, we did have it back.
Hold on.
Yeah. As usual, I'm dressed beautifully. It's Beth Graham at 7414 North Boyd Way. I have been a huge proponent of the pool. I go every Friday, every Saturday, every Sunday. I take Fridays off work in summer. I love it. I came from a community where 40% would be a complete mandate that, you do this. And I think that you have, Martin has said too, that the 40% is huge. I think if you don't, if we continue to have this discussion about, are we going to do the pool, aren't we going to do the pool, why did you even ask the public part? Because you clearly aren't listening to what the village is telling you. They said they would pay for it. They said they wanted it. Now, if you build it, they will come. I know that's in Detroit. Part of the reason this pool doesn't have the membership it should have is because it's a dump. It's a 50-year-old pool, looks like a 50-year-old pool, and there's a beautiful pool in Menlo that comes along with your JCC membership. You don't think that people won't drop that pool membership and come here if this pool is comparable? You're crazy, because they will. And they'll stay here because we're part of their tax base. And a simple, small membership fee. So, constituents told you what they want. I think we need to respect that. And I think that to continue to have this discussion about do we even want to do it, is it really fair to us who took the time to fill out the survey and who enjoy the pool all the time.
Thank you. But any other member of the public wish to address the board on the issue of public employment? Please.
Hello, I'm Kelly Freeze. I live at 7218 North Crossway Road. I've been a member of the Fox Point Pool since we moved here in 2008. That was one of the first things we did as new homeowners, and my children have loved going to the pool. I would perhaps suggest that one of the reasons you're seeing a decrease in programming, and this is merely a scheduling thing. I think the way that families live now, with two parents working, it's not feasible for families to get kids to swim team at 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning during the week. For families that work, 8 and 9 o'clock in the morning is when your child is in daycare. So if you're looking for increases in numbers in swim team participation, I would say after working hours. My children swim 4 days a week at Nicolay between 5 and 6 p.m. And as a working family, that's the time we can swim. We can't swim before the day starts. 9 a.m. might be a great time for a master's level swim team, but if they're looking to appeal to families that have working adults, and maybe that would be scheduling maybe an early morning swim team and a later afternoon swim team. I would venture to guess that the participation would increase because, to be honest, there's probably not enough families where there's a parent home at 9 a.m. to field 2 hours of swim team. Thank you.
Thank you for your comment, Ms. Williams. All right, Mr. Cardinal?
Yeah, so I have a lot of comments or statements, and I've actually prepared a motion too that I'll address once kind of all conversations, especially here. I think a couple citizen comments that we had here, obviously chair of the full committee, and like obviously complete support of the pool. I think our,
Was your microphone?
oh, it should be. Is that better?
Thank you.
There we go. Okay, yeah, so I'm, of course, an unabashed supporter of the pool. That's why I volunteered to chair the pool committee. And what I think that what we've heard from the citizens is just a very small reflection of what the village feels about the pool. And I think not moving forward with the pool, I do think is like one of the citizens just said, Beth, is you're going against the mandate. Look at the survey numbers. Overwhelmingly, these are people I even talked to. The survey confirmed what all the anecdotal conversations I've had with citizens. A lot of people who don't even go to the pool, haven't been there in years, still highly value it, and they don't really care how much it costs. If you take a look at the financial position of the village, and it's nicely reflected earlier in just today's meeting, we're exceptionally healthy. We have a lot of when it comes to the debt service, we're well below what's legally, the legal threshold of what can be, what kind of debt service that the village can have. I do think that some of the things that, program changes, I've kind of heard the same thing. I think some of the programs are dying because people do need to have an all-day solution for children. Just to add on to one of the comments is, heard this from probably a dozen families, is swim lessons on a Saturday morning. Because they just can't get kids there anywhere between 9 and 11 and 12 a.m. on a Monday through Friday because both parents are typically working in this community. Let's just go through, I think all the points were made even here were all relevant. Staffing. That's a problem in all sectors. Obviously, I'm in the private snow and ice removal plus landscaping. Every single one of those businesses is suffering from staffing issues. That's kind of a defeatist attitude to say that we don't have staffing. Whereas we're going to have to kind of get together as a community, start doing some outreach and getting more of our young audience to go through lifeguard training. We're going to need to do that year after year, just like other industries are doing, because every industry is suffering from a labor pool shortage. For the parking situation, the current parking lot is rarely full. I'm at the pool at least 2 times a week. At night, usually when it's most crowded, and on the weekends, there's parking there. And the pool the large pool that was surveyed, the image of it isn't substantially larger than what we have now. It's going to be an equivalent draw on population. Part of it is too is there's kind of which one do you take? We want to get more revenue, but there's not. People will find the parking. They'll carpool. A lot of kids bike. Families even bike to go in there. The small pool concept, again, going back to the survey, it's overwhelming. Almost, if you do the percentage of response to the survey, almost 50% of tax-paying households do not want the small pool. If we're going to invest in the pool, let's build a larger pool that has more attractions. It's going to attract people kind of like the current pool and other attractive pools have now. I was actually very with the with the registrations, as was mentioned by Bill, was I was pleasantly pleased. The last 6 years, this last summer, we had the most family memberships from Fox Point. That's who's paying for it, and that's who predominantly enjoys going to the pool. Is people who it's here to primarily serve the residents, and that number has upticked. And I think again with some changes to programming, we could get that number to change as well too. What I find interesting too is, although we talk about too, is the percentage of memberships as a percentage of the population is really low. Yet the survey tells us that overwhelmingly people want to have a pool. It was over 90% of households, it was 93% of households that have minor children. And then people kind of think, oh, that's, you take out the households without minor children, 73% of them either strongly agree or agree that this village will have a pool. If we're really concerned about, it's purely just the financial decision, I have some significant challenges with just making decisions based entirely on finances, and not based on what's a community builder, what's a community enhancer. Is 57% of respondents have agreed that they would agree to a tax increase to fund pools. I just think that this survey response, I think, is an overwhelming result to have the pool. And here's kind of my, this is the funny part is, here's my stack of pool stuff. This goes back to the Barrientos study, which is from 2007. That's 12 years old now. So obviously I wasn't involved at that point in time, but since then, we've done some very critical steps to get us to this point to kind of really make a decision moving forward. And really kind of see four of them. We did a UWM study that really kind of asked that core question: should we be in the pool business? And they did a survey, and the responses to that was yes, we should be. It has a lot of value. We had the village did a report that came back and showed all of the things that we were kind of aware of on a 50-year-old facility. It was basically a structural, physical analysis of all the problems with the current pool. That was very in-depth and thorough. That was a really great piece to have. We worked with UWM. They came up with these conceptual designs and said, this is kind of, we looked at that smaller, larger, this is what it could possibly do. We had some public workshops where we kind of asked people what you like, what you like, any changes in that. And then we had this, that AIRS, so we made another step, did a much more comprehensive, they really got specific on the options. And then, I agree with this survey, which is very powerful. I think the respondents are overwhelming. This is an intelligent and informed citizenry. They can understand what dollars and cents, excuse me, full audit, what that means on tax dollars, and that was in the survey of how much this would cost, and that wasn't a barrier. So those are kind of my comments. And I do have once comments are through, though, I have a motion prepared to move ahead with this. So thank you.
Comments by anybody else?
Yes, Mr. Yeah, I was prepared tonight to have a presentation on the survey results. We have also gotten a lot more information about what the debt impact would be, and also information about things to think about as far as the operation of the pool. I, for one, am not prepared to act on a motion to authorize it for this time.
I don't know what your motion is either, but just as to that, I think we need to be careful for what we're agendaed to do. We're agendaed for a presentation regarding the pool survey results and to discuss and act in regard to the pool survey results. I don't believe that it'd be fair reading of that to say that we're prepared agenda to make a decision regarding the pool.
Was that the intention of the chair? Was that would just be when the agenda was made? I mean, I think that's a good point.
No, I think it's a fair point too. I think we agended the item for action. I don't think we were specific about what the actions might be limited to.
Okay.
So one of the things that came up at the last pool committee meeting was the fact that the committee felt like it could and perhaps should get some direction from the board as to what their next steps might be. Sorry to take, if you have that as your point, I'm already sorry to take that from you, but because, you know, if we have consistently used the bridge as a model, and with that, there were limitations within that charge to that committee. There are limitations in the charge to the pool committee. The pool committee hadn't at the time reviewed the charges that the committee had. We weren't sure whether or not there should be a recommendation from the committee or how it should work, or certainly with the bridge, the spin-off was a fundraising arm to proceed with getting funds to proceed with something. Anyway, I think that I can speak for the group in saying that we felt like that was not necessarily our purview, but it might be the board's purview to circle back at some point.
You need to ask the committee for recommendation.
Well, not necessarily, just to give direction to the committee about, I mean, the committee has walked through all of these steps.
Yes.
Marty has certainly led the committee through these steps. He has a very impressive folder of information. So the committee was wondering what the board might want in addition, or how the committee should function moving forward, or should it function at all moving forward? Should it be, I know that the bridge group was at one point disbanded after it felt like it had done its thing. So the committee just had some questions of the board about what might be needed, wanted, required, not required. Would you say that?
Yeah, Mr. Fonstead?
Yeah, well, one large aspect of this that we haven't talked about is to what extent we would look for private fundraising on this project. The footbridge, we had 50% private fundraising. The library is looking for about 25%. I can't imagine this pool, I guess, being going forward without some significant element of private fundraising. And that's just my view, but we as a board haven't hashed that issue out.
No, we haven't. I mean, there are a few ways forward here. We could, for instance, we could entertain a motion, of course. We could take a straw poll to see where the board seems to be on several of these issues. It's tough to know exactly how to proceed here. The survey has been very helpful. I continue to struggle with it myself. There is a strong consensus, I think, on the survey that the citizens do value the pool and are willing to pay for it. It is difficult for me, though, to see how to move forward in a financially responsible way, given that suggestion. For all the reasons stated, the virtue of putting the pool in Longacre, and with all due respect to the issues of traffic and sensitivity to that neighborhood, is that in theory we could sell the property that the current pool is at for a substantial amount of money, dedicate those proceeds to the new pool, add that property to the tax base, and dedicate some or all of the expanded tax base to the new pool, which could go a long way toward funding it. That's just a thought. That's not a new thought, but that does point to a benefit, I think, of a Longacre location. On the other hand, that's not the first choice of the citizens that responded to the survey. The first choice is a large pool at the current location, but the financial implications of that over 50 years are sobering, given the decline in population, even under the most optimistic projections of what the pool may do So I'm conflicted over the issue, and that doesn't even begin to address private fundraising, as Mr. Bonstaff points out. Any other thoughts about how to move this forward in Central?
Well, not necessarily on that, but just a few further thoughts. The Bridge Group raised $592,000 in about a 7-month period. That was mandated by the village. And it was in a horribly contentious political climate, internal political, not partisan, just, I think that, you know, I'm firmly in belief that having a community pool is advantageous for our community. And actually, this bonding packet, that's the least of the problems. The bond is easy. It's operations that's the challenge. And it is a 50-year commitment. A bond is a 10-year commitment. Those are really different animals. So I also think that, however, I have to believe that with the strong preference in the survey shown for this project, I have to believe that fundamentally would set a group up positively to raise money to support the project. If that many people really want this to happen, what that to me says is that, and there are people that fundamentally believe that that's actually a community asset. Whether or not they use it, they're not using it. I mean, they're clearly not using it. But fundamentally, people believe that it's a community asset, and there are people that then give to things that they value within the community.
Whether they use it or not.
Whether they use it or not. So that to me is part of the statistics that came out of that information, which to me is really positive and optimistic.
Mr. Pratt?
Well, I think one way we can move forward is when you go with the results of the survey, and in this round, the builder wanted a large pool. If we have a pool, they want a large pool at the existing site. So if we can refine this and be more focused, I would suggest we just move forward in our decision making. Large pool, existing site, or no pool. And we just discard the other alternatives at this point because they're just they're distractions pretty much at this point. And perhaps when we get down the road, another survey goes out with more specific financial information, not just on what it would cost or what it would impact the taxes, but would we be willing to have a pool in the village, knowing we're going to have to fund it $250,000 a year? So that might put a little different focus on some of the responses.
Mr. Bonstaff?
Yeah, maybe what we should do, and this is in line with what Trustee Kravitz is saying, is maybe we should, now that we have the survey results, and the pool committee have to go back and look at the charge too, but I think it's largely completed its charge. Maybe what we need the pool committee to do is to make a recommendation to the board, and I'm confident that recommendation would be a large pool in the existing location, and then for us to take up the other, take up that recommendation and all the implications that go along with it. I don't know, it looks like our attorney is about ready to say something.
Mr. Larson?
I just responded to disbanding the committee. If we were going to follow a parallel path that was done with the footbridge, before that committee disbanded, they were charged with either finding an entity that would conduct fundraising for the village or create one. We wanted to make a clear separation as much as we could from the village for that fundraising to happen. Didn't want that to be village fundraising. And so just to focus on that comment about this family, maybe they've completed their charge. You might want to consider charging them with that, finding an entity who can conduct some fundraising.
Right, and with just to remind ourselves, the Footprint Trends decided to create its own 501c3 entity after exploring other options, and that was our way forward. But the full committee, for instance, wanted to do something similar. We have a good model for advancing that goal.
Yeah, and I think Trustee Simchak hit on an important point, and that is, the fundraising will address the capital expense and reduce the bonding, but it doesn't really, unless we add this to the requirement, doesn't really address the ongoing operational losses. And you might have something like an endowment for that, or I don't know. It's just that's the real difficult part of this, is that you commit the village to funding a losing operation for a long time.
Mr. Trotter?
Just to clarify a couple things too, this is a resolution for the full committee. I didn't have this in front of the last meeting that we had, but one of their charges is part of the fundraising. Identification of existing appropriate entity or the creation of an appropriate entity to conduct fundraising efforts for the pool. The committee never addressed that. Part of that was mine. When I talked individually to the pool committee, there was no one that raised their hand about fundraising, and I didn't talk to them. So I'm not saying that means you stop. It's a current barrier that we need to find some people or entities actually to do private fundraising. I also don't think there's another reason to go back to the pool committee, because what Christine said was correct. The last meeting we had a few weeks ago, when we looked at the survey, was they actually didn't feel comfortable making a recommendation. They felt like their charge, which was in here, which was we collected data, we've done some research, we've recommended different consultants. Here's the data for the village board, and we want the village board to make a recommendation. That was what.
So on top of that, it'd be easier to establish the details and how to fundraise, who contacts the people, all those details, once we know what we're looking at. So I think what we should do as a board is direct the pool committee, it's the large pool at the existing site. That's what the survey said. So now let's zero in on that. Let's nail down a lot of the costs. Let's get as best we can projection of membership in the future. The pool is a dump, as she said. It's true.
It's retro now.
But how do we go forward if we're still dangling on 4 options? So
Clarify, that data is there though. That's a misconception. Those questions, it's in the AERS report. If you read the AERS study, it has, for both size pools, has operating cost projections, membership projections, program projections. A lot of that stuff is in there. I think the fundraising is separate. But a lot of this additional data, we have that. We've done it.
Well, I have to say the bridge group had no direction. When the bridge group was charged with going out and trying to find money, there was a question of would it be renovated, would it be repaired, or would it not exist? And the village was very split on all of those choices. So the bridge group went out and had to figure out, could they organize? They had to work with the fundraiser to figure out capacity and interest levels and all of those other things. As the board was constantly working through the details associated with it, they were working in parallel. It was not, you do this, then I'll do this. So I have to say it's not convenient, it's not polite, it's not pretty, but there's plenty of times that it takes so long to get something off the ground that the political process can work on its own pace as the fundraising process is getting organized on its own pace. And at that point, you need somebody to be like laying the groundwork. The person that wants to give a large gift to something like this is most likely not your most avid swimmer. It's most likely somebody that loves community assets. And so those types of people are, you know, they're either on board or they're not, and you either know that right now or you don't.
Is it the consensus of the board that to the extent we move forward with the current site big pool?
I don't think we're intended for that. But that would be my suggestion, would be to put that on the agenda. Your agenda to talk about the survey.
That's right. You know, I think there's been a lot of good stuff, and Marty and Christine, the whole committee, I think this process has been very good from the beginning. I mean, Michael and I even found the 1962 pool study, which we didn't include in your packet, which by the way said not build a pool, right? It said not build a pool. But I think the process we followed has been very linear. I think it's been good. It's been baby steps, and I think that's a good thing. But I'm also going to say that I think, as you said, you're conflicted. There's a lot of conflicting. I mean, I think everyone likes to have community assets. At the same time, there's a significant fiduciary responsibility, not only to people that are alive now, but people who are not born yet, or not going to be around. So it would. I mean, I kind of agree with Eric's position. Mr. Larson's position. You guys, I guess if I would take a month and digest. There's a lot here. I don't know what your motion is. That's all cool, but I just think that there's a lot here, and I would rather you digest it and think about it and make an informed, thoughtful decision than make a motion today because it's all hot and fresh. And notwithstanding Mr. Larson's comments on it.
To the village attorney, to the extent we move forward on the survey results, what form would that take?
Well, for example, I don't know that I'm understanding your question exactly, but your agenda to talk about the survey and to act regarding the survey, and we've got the surveyor here, and so you could say, gee, we really want more analysis of X, or can you give us a graphic of Y? That's what I read the agenda to say. I think if you want to talk about, for example, for the committee, they really need to know what if the answer is no or not. If the answer is no pool, they need to know that. And I think that would be something for an upcoming agenda, and to make a decision. Do we want to continue to explore this, or based on the, or do we want to not continue to explore it? And if we're going to continue to explore it, make your agenda item broad enough that if the motion is let's focus solely on the large pool, that's something you could decide on in the upcoming agenda.
Yes.
I have a question.
Ms. Sumner.
I guess, I am really struggling with the financial implications of the pool and the ongoing maintenance and everything. I'm a mom of 2 small kids, so really this should ideally appeal to me. But I guess what I'm wondering, like one of the members of our community had stated, perhaps if the people in our community knew about all of the concerns that were brought up by our assistant village manager, is it possible to tell from this data, what perhaps their response would be to the no pool question?
So if you're asking, can we tell from this data whether or not people want a pool? I think that's pretty clear already. Yes. Is there, I'm not sure that you'd be able to tell from this data how people would feel if, if additional information about the projected operating losses of the pool over 50 years, given a range of different projections, what they would say with that. I also am not sure, what they would say if they were presented with information about the possibility of establishing some kind of foundation that would help cover those costs, as I think you mentioned. So, I mean, there's always room for public's opinion to change when new information comes to light. I mean, that's the best answer I can give.
I think one of the difficulties in your question is that at some point on any kind of decision you need a certain level of understanding and expertise on any issue, and that's hard. You reach a point, I think, in a survey that's hard to expect in every one of your respondents. If that makes sense. So we're asking our citizens to understand the staffing model issue. We're asking our citizens to understand the financial model issue. So in something like this, I think it's broad, it's good, it gives a good sense, but I think at some point you just run into questions that sometimes some people are just not able, they don't have time, they're smart enough, they don't have time, or the wherewithal and experience maybe to take as deep into it, or you can't explain enough depth in a survey, it's difficult.
One thing I'd like to add, if the board doesn't mind, I think that it's important to note that in the beginning of the survey, that the question about tax increases was, it was a conscious decision to leave that as an unspecified tax increase and see how many households would respond positively. And I think the fact that a clear majority of households agreed that they would be okay with an unspecified tax increase to support construction of the new pool is probably a good indicator that if I had to bet on whether or not households in this community would respond positively to questions that would ask about, are you still willing to support this in light of this additional cost? If I had to bet, I would say that this community, based on these results, probably would continue to support them. But again, you won't know that for sure unless you ask specifically and provide them with information relevant to the question.
A few more comments. Yeah,
I do think it's difficult, also when you're looking at it and it's like, yes pool, no pool. Sometimes I think when you're presented with something like that, and it kind of is like in an abstract, like, you sort of envision in your head what something you like, and then, I don't know, then in actuality, when presented with all the challenges that, have been brought up, I don't know, because like I said, this should appeal to me, but I'm struggling with it. I see a lot of things like in the future that could really become a problem with operating this pool, and then, worse stuff that they're going to end up to be a part of.
I'm going to entertain a few more comments. We're going to have to come back on this, and we're going to have to craft an agenda item language that will enable us to make some firm choices so we can move this forward. Mr. Grotto?
Just real quickly, it's part of the future discussion. I agree with what your analysis was of the survey as well. I think the operational expense initially, we brought that up at every public meeting we had, and I probably told dozens and dozens of people personally, it doesn't matter. They don't care. The operational expense.
Actually, that's all cool.
Well, that's another thing. I don't know how they responded to the survey, but that's not a secret.
No,
The operational, how much the operation, that's been well announced, publicly.
That's true. I guess if I was God, I would ask everybody one question. Given the laws that we have in place, it's much like, you and I talked about garbage. People say, charge me as much as I want for garbage. The reality is we can't. We have levy caps, we have certain expenditures, we have things in place. So what happens if we get to the point in the future where the expenditure requires us to cut other services? That would be my question. Would you choose the pool over other services that we provide? Because that's a possibility.
Then why
And so I'm just
wasn't
asking.
Why wasn't that question in the survey?
No,
And that's
please,
the
please,
response?
this is not.
So that would just be my own, so you're right about that. But I'm trying to think of all the possibilities long term. And I'm not saying I'm right, or I'm not saying you're wrong, I'm just throwing it out there.
Ms. Simchich will give you the final word.
I guess I would partially agree with your assessment of would people be okay with the increased cost no matter what. But that being said, I think that if you say, would you be okay with subsidizing the pool with tax dollars by 200,000 a year or whatever, or range or whatever, how you want to say it, for the next 50 years, that's a fundamentally different question. Unfortunately, that's the question we have to answer.
Yes, thank you. And so we'll conclude this discussion now, but we're not going to conclude the discussion. We'll conclude it for tonight, but we're going to be revisited. Mr. Sarah, thank you. This was very enlightening.
It was a pleasure working with Fox Point.
And the survey was, I believe, well constructed and well implemented, and it's given us very valuable feedback. And,
Thank you.
And we appreciate it very much.
Sure. And if you have any further questions, feel free to reach out to us and we'll actually spoke.
And thank you again to our two pool committee members.
Thanks for your questions and your patience. Appreciate it.
Well, belaboring on this issue and have done a good job in bringing to us the issues and various aspects to this.
Are we having some kind of motion for next meeting?
How are we moving forward? We're going to craft a new agenda item in an upcoming meeting with the village attorney's help, so we can properly address these questions and move forward. All right, we move to 5D, consideration of ordinance to repeal or recreate section 678. Smoking prohibited during vaping in the village of Fox Point Village Code, Mr. Manager.
And thank you for being here.
Yes, we have the director of the Fox Point.
The 5 police, is that?
No, not the Fox Point. The North Shore Health Department, Ms. Christensen.
Sure. Thank you for your attention on this issue. So we've been working with the issue of vaping and electronic cigarette usage and concerned about for a while now. The issue at hand is obviously in the media you've been hearing a lot about lung diseases associated with vaping and e-cigarette usage. And when I use those terms, that also includes things like drooling, soaring. There are lots of new terminologies for what we're talking about here today. What you're being asked to consider is the expansion of current state statute prohibits smoking in restaurants, bars, retail establishments. We're all familiar with that. It's been around for about a decade now. And what this ordinance would do on a local level would expand the definition of smoking to include electronic cigarette usage. So essentially that would mean that electronic cigarettes would not be allowed in public indoor workplaces. Again, restaurants, bars, retail establishments, and other workplaces. So again, it's an update to the law. We've been working with other communities in the North Shore that have passed this, and we're hoping that you'll consider passage of this too. I have a lot of information, so if you do have questions, I'm happy to talk about it, but I know that it's been a long evening and
how many of our neighbors have already passed something?
so right now, 5 out of 7.
Any questions for Director Christensen, Mr. Bennett?
Thank you for enduring this long.
Oh, you bet.
So that's all I have. I'm ready to vote.
Mr. Fox.
Yeah, I move that we adopt the ordinance to repeal and recreate section 678-27 as set forth in the agenda.
Second by Mr. Crowder. Discussion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Ms. Christensen, thank you.
Yes, you made it worthwhile.
15 minutes of fame right there.
You worked in that goal this morning.
What's that?
You worked in that goal this morning.
Future agenda items. If any board member wish to put an item on future agenda. Seeing none, announcements. Mr. Bonstead.
A couple of announcements. Last Saturday, working volunteers helped plant 122 trees at Indian Creek and also install wildlife protection around those trees that are susceptible to deer, rabbits, and mice. This Saturday, you can channel your inner lumberjack and show up at between 8 and noon, and there are 108 trees yet to plant. Volunteers will be mobilizing at the dead end of Mohawk Road. Technically, we're doing Shirley. Anyway, so that is coming up. I want to amplify the letter that you received from Barbara and Patrick Patterson about the erosion of the shoreline along Beach Drive. As they said, Barbara's lived at Beach Drive for 40 years and she's never seen as much damage. There is a Great Lakes Water Level Informational Meeting that is scheduled for Thursday, October 17th at the Slits Audubon Nature Center that is open to the public between 6 and 8 p.m. And it is everything you want to know about the lake shore. For anybody who hasn't been down to the lakefront, I took some pictures of what's going on to give you an idea, and they're right behind you. This shows you the kind of, it's undercutting the bank. That pipe used to be covered by land, so why don't you just go on. You can see it's also kind of filled with silt. This is by the turnaround. We have a manhole here, and there's a drop off. This is across from my property. People stop all the time, day and night, walk to the edge. It's not stable. Anyway, go on. If you fell down the hole, that's what you find. Okay, I'll go with these kind of quick. You can see where the bush that used to be able to walk between the bush and the shoreline there, and now that the soil's gone. You can go on the next one. This is another spot, looks like the same bush, but it's a different bush. Okay. You can see the trees that were along the lakefront are getting washed away. Erin Kinney, when she was a 5th grade kindergartner, planted a tree along the beach, a spruce tree, and it was growing to about, 12, 15 feet high. It washed away. They were able to pull it out of the shore, and they tried to plant it in their yard. I don't know if it could have happened, but you can go on. But this is happening. You can see there's a chunk of the soil or the turf that's gotten washed away. You can go on to the next one. This I took today. We've had some of those pictures were taken earlier. We've had a couple more bad days. Today, the wind was 10 miles an hour. That was enough to cause large waves. And you look at the shore and you say, well, there's a lot of riprap there. Last year, that pipe was covered by those concrete blocks. They've all been pushed around and the shoreline pushed in. Okay, so you can go to the next one. That's one of our manholes. You can see the waves. You go to the next one. It's about 20 feet from the road to the edge of the bank there. And that's getting closer every day. Next one. There you can see some of the trees that used to be dry and on dry land now they're and then I think the last one probably. This is one of our trees that we planted. It's about 10 feet from the shoreline now. So this is something we're going to have to deal with it as a village, I believe, and that's why I wanted to show it to you.
Ms. Suchin?
No announcements.
Ms.
No announcements.
Mr. Corrado?
No announcements.
Mr. Farrell?
No, no.
Mr. Owen?
No announcements.
I have a short announcement. I want to congratulate the parents who organized the Fox Point Walk Street Day on October before. That was everyone gathered with some police officers present here at a congregational church. I think that this group is advancing the cause of pedestrian bicycle safety, particularly with regard to school children, and it's doing a good job. Mr. Manager.
And in the same vein, and I think I sent you an email on this, but I always try to make sure I update you on citizen comments that are maybe not on the agenda. We had a pedestrian individual a couple months ago, and a lady in the community has sort of taken over that mantle. We have met with them a couple times. We've tried to focus the pedestrian issue as best we can, because it was kind of vague while we were here. We've, at this point, somewhat identified it primarily around Storm School and drop off and pick up. So we've had a session with them already in my office, in addition to one other session. And we thought it was best to get the school involved. And so we're going to be meeting with Karen and with the superintendent because I think there's been a recognition that the school has facilitated, not to be mean, the school drop-off has occurred and it's kind of grown. There hasn't really been an investment by the school district in the infrastructure on their property. We've got to kind of back it up on the street. And I think there's a recognition that maybe that's not the best way to do it. We have provided them with some samples of other neighborhood schools, other communities, and how they do it, which I think is helpful for them. I don't think they've ever really considered that. And we're kind of waiting back to hear back from her as to when the school can sit down and do this. But I think we're going to talk about having a discussion with them and hopefully including in their capital project of the school, maybe some improvements. The Nicolay baseball field obviously is there. There's some things, opportunities, and I don't know if reference that's a good idea, but there's some opportunities there to make some minor improvements to school, which I hope will help that situation a little bit. But we're going to start with that and see how that goes. But it is still ongoing.
That concludes our agenda for tonight. I move to adjourn.
Second by Mr. Von Stadel.